Have you ever wondered if the entities we worship might actually be the architectures of our biggest shadows? It's a heavy thought, but I want to take you back, way back to one of my past lives, and I don't even want to call it a past life anymore because I feel like that's a level of understanding I'm already past. I want to call it a parallel life. This, I believe, is the turning point in history that you will never read about in history books. They wouldn't dare to talk about this shit. It'd be too enlightening. Let me take you back. We're talking 25,500 BC. This was the era of the Lucifer Rebellion, a time of immense cosmic tension. And at the heart of the story is a guy many of you know as Toth or Thoth, depending on how you've encountered him in your studies. Now, here's the thing. Our good old buddy Toth, well, the universe was once very proud of him. Honestly, the founders loved him, like, a lot. He had spent literal eons working to help rehabilitate the Annunaki races, even just a little bit. The law of one. He was the hero of the Emerald Covenant, and for thousands of years, he was the guy everyone trusted. But in 25,500 BC, something shifted. Something broke. Toth caved into pressure, and what followed was something I am going to call the Great Deception. Because he was so trusted, Toth was allowed into inner circles of the Eoni colonies, and these were groups of ascended masters. Their goal was to use Stargate 6, which, by the way, Stargate 6 is in Iran. Those of you who are not familiar with the planetary grid, Stargate 6 runs from Sirius B all the way down to Earth. It's like a massive interstellar highway, but more like a specialized passage connected to the main cosmic arteries. Ioni were trying to open a specific passage called the Halls of Amoria. They needed to run enough high-frequency energy through this gate to override something called the Nibiruan Diotic Crystal Grid. Yeah, that's a mouthful, I know. Call that shit the NDC grid. This NDC grid is a parasitic frequency fence. It is anchored in the area we now know as Stonehenge. The Ioni's mission was vital for the spiritual freedom of this planet, and Thoth was supposed to be the key assistant in that process. He was even entrusted with the Cloister Dora Torah Plate 11. Now let me explain what these plates are, because they aren't just pieces of fucking metal. Think of them as small hyper-advanced holographic discs. They store everything. They hold the history of our race, the planetary history, and the mechanics of the higher dimensions. They are essentially the source code for our reality. Plate 11 was Thoth's responsibility. He was supposed to translate its contents for the people, but there was a catch, a very specific catch. Specific instructions that he was supposed to translate it verbally. It was never supposed to be in written form. Why? Because the planet was already so fucking riddled with corruption that putting this power into writing was considered to be too dangerous. The written word can be twisted, stolen, or used as a manual for the wrong motherfucking side. Thoth's job was to teach the Anu Melchizedek races, the ones that are half human, half Anunnaki collectives, about the inner Christos and the Law of One. He was supposed to lead them towards biogenesis, towards spiritual evolution. But these plates, they weren't just books, they were frequency holders. They could actually activate things called the signet shields. Imagine a hub-sized cap device that acts as a remote control for a Stargate. Yeah, you have the small plate, which is the key, and then the signet shield, which is the activator. There's about 12 of these on Earth right now, and created way back in 246,000 BC as part of the Emerald Covenant. Thoth had the key to Stargate 11, and that's a lot of power for one being. So what happened was that Thoth made a choice. He decided to side with his family, the Anunnaki, specifically the group we call the Toth Enki Zephilium. Yeah, it's a mouthful. but basically the Anunnaki line that crossbred with the Zetas. He was seduced by the idea of a united Anunnaki nation. Imagine all of these warring factions finally agreeing to stop the fighting and create a paradise. Yeah, sounds good on paper, am I right? But the price of that paradise was the total takeover of the time matrix. Toth decided that it was okay to betray the founders and everyone who loved him if it meant that his people were united. He walked right into the Eoni colonies, the very people he had worked with for thousands of years, and he began to sabotage. Now, the Eoni colonies are located on what is left of the Lemurian continent, right? So by 25,500 BC, most of Lemuria was already gone. But there were these beautiful island nations left, and one of them is the activator site for Stargate 12. And this site is what we now call Hawaii.
Is that over by Maui? Because weird, weren't there just fires over there? I would not be surprised. Anyway,
it wasn't the gate itself, but the Q site activator. Think of it like the ignition switch for a car. You have the car, but without the switch, you ain't gonna get very far, are you? So the Ionis were there to break the Nibirian hold of the Stargates, and Thoth, being the trusted figure that he was, he decided to go ahead and handpick a few priests and a few Melchizedeks, and then he got him into a high-level Templar mechanics program. He spent like 10 or 11 motherfucking years embedding them with information. And guess what? We weren't prejudiced back then. The Iani women were faced with an impossible choice. To save everybody on Earth, they agreed to go to Nibiru. They thought that they were staying alive long enough to figure out a plan, to find a way to fix it later. But before they were even taken, they were subjected to a selection process. It was brutal. They were treated like meat. Only the ones with the right genetic traits, the right eye color, the right proportions, those ones were chosen. It was a total violation. I honestly believe that this is where a lot of women get their deep-seated insecurities about their looks. It's genetic memory. It's embedded in your DNA plate. They remember being treated as nothing more than a biological asset. It's a trauma response that has rippled through time. And you have to remember who these women are. They're part of the gender twin set. In the Iani culture, we all came in with our twin, the one that we're genetically bonded with, literally one being in this higher dimension. So the Anunnaki intentionally split us up. They forced all the women into breeding programs, and they raped them when they resisted. The woman said,
kill me now, we won't help you.
They would just take her by force and then keep us tied up until we delivered. Like, no wonder a lot of women have this really weird consent, no consent fetish. It's a defense mechanism. If I like it, you can't hurt me, you know? So the betrayal is so deep, it sent shockwaves all the way up the time matrix. When someone that high up, someone that trusted goes that bad, they go very bad. This was a cosmic catastrophe. And this brings us back to the Emerald Tablets. You've probably seen or heard of them mentioned in New Age circles as these great works of wisdom. But here's the thing. Here's the truth. Thoth stole Plate 11. He took that shit and he did the unthinkable. He created a physical written translation. He wrote the Emerald Tablets specifically for the corrupt Atlantean priests. He basically gave them the user manual for the planetary grids. He told them exactly how the Templar mechanics work. He had promised never to do this. He knew if the Anunnaki got access to this information, they could reverse the frequencies and the grids. They could lock the planet down. And that's exactly what he helped them do. The Emerald Tablets we see today, they're just fragments of the original volumes, which were a comprehensible guide on how to hijack a planet's energetic grid. I kid you not. Thoth used his immense knowledge to ensure that the Anunnaki takeover was successful. And the Iani women, once they got to Nibiru, they realized the full extent of that lie, that their husbands hadn't been spared. Many were castrated, many were used as living electrical posts. It wasn't until 1992 that things shifted again. There were these things called the Palladian-Syrian agreements. Some of the Anunnaki finally agreed to stop the devastation. They entered the Emerald Covenant
Again,
promising to help humanity ascend. We're hopeful, okay, maybe they finally learned their lesson. But no, they were just waiting to see if the stellar activation cycle would actually happen. What actually happened was 1998, the grids got high enough to anchor a stellar bridge. It was the official activation. In January 2000, many of them, including those groups that broke the agreement, they decided that the opportunity for a total takeover was too good to pass up. They went right back to their old ways, their old agendas. When you hear people channeling Toth, just remember this. The Great Deception isn't just a story from 25,000 fucking years ago. It's a pattern. It's a strategy of isolation, of genetic manipulation, and it has always been happening now at the same time. Look around you. It's still playing out in our world today, right now. But let's take a step back here. I know this is a lot to process.
Or maybe it's not. I don't know.
You might be asking, why does this matter to me right now? It matters because our DNA carries those memories. Our planetary grids are still reacting to these ancient events. When we talk about ascending or waking up, we're really talking about clearing those old overlays. We're talking about reclaiming our history from the people who tried to rewrite it. Thoth was a master of words. Frequency doesn't fucking lie. Think about the concept of the inner Christos that Thoth was supposed to teach us. It's about your direct connection to source. No middleman, no master required. The irony is that Thoth used that very teaching to make himself the middleman. He became the god of wisdom, the one you had to go to get the secrets to life. But the real secret is that these secrets shouldn't have even been secrets in the first place. They are our birthright. They are stored in the plates for everybody. So let's look at the mechanics again for a second, because Stargate 11, that's the one Thoth wanted. Why? Because Stargate 11 is the level where you can close down the connection to the higher dimensions. It's like a master valve. If you control D11, you control the reverse matrix. You can create a closed loop system that feeds up its own energy system. This is what we call the Phantom Matrix. Was the ultimate goal of the united Annunaki nation, a kingdom where they were the ultimate gods. They didn't want to evolve, they wanted to rule. Thoth, in his moment of weakness, decided that ruling as prince was a lot better than serving as guardians as the whole motherfucker. It's a classic tragedy on it. But here's the empowering part. That motherfucker ended in 2017. The activation cycle, was from 2000 to 2017, and the same energies that were present in 25,500 BC have returned. We now have the choice to do it differently this time. Now that you know this information, we have the chance to see through the deception. When you look at the world today, do you see the same tactics, the jams communication, us versus them narrative, pressure to conform to united front? Rather something that actually strips away our sovereignty. It's all there. The script doesn't fucking change. But our awareness has the access to that information now. We can look at that history of the Eoni and say, we remember that shit. We remember that happened, and we're not falling for it again. I often think about the Eoni women on Kauai. Their sacrifice was immense. They went into the motherfucking lion's den. They thought that they could save everybody. They thought that they could save the world, and in a way, we did. We kept the genetic codes alive. Even if those codes were buried under Anunnaki overlays, those codes are in us. They're waiting to be reactivated. Every time you choose truth over a comfortable lie, every time you claim your own sovereignty, you're healing a piece of that ancient betrayal. Or read a quote that's inspirational from the Emerald Tablets. Just take a breath, take a step back, feel the frequency behind those words. Ask yourself, is this leading me towards my own inner power, or is it leading me to follow a master? Because the law of one isn't something you need a book to understand. It's the reality of our interconnectedness. It's the frequency of unconditional love and responsibility, and no one, not even a master like Thoth, can take that shit away from you unless you let them. Don't give them your power. Don't give your power away. Ooh, give us your power and we'll take care of you. When it's said like that, it's a little laughable. It makes more sense to not give it away, does it not? We have moved into a time where truth can no longer be hidden. The halls of Amoria, those passages of high frequencies, have opened again. And this time, we don't need a motherfucking middleman to walk through them. So let's talk about the Mahi lines for a moment. These are the genetic lineages that carry full 12-strand DNA potential. After that Kauai incident, these lines were almost wiped out. Almost. They had to be carefully rebuilt over thousands of years. This is why there's so much focus on the bloodlines in our history. But it's not about being royal in a worldly sense. It's about carrying the frequency keys to the stargates. It's about being a living anchor for the higher dimensions. The Anunnaki wanted to corrupt these lines because they could mess up the DNA, And if they can mess up the DNA, they can mess with the Earth's grids. Your DNA is literally an antenna for the planet. If the antenna is bent, if your spine is collapsed, the signal is distorted. Thoth knew this shit better than anybody, and that's why his betrayal is so effective and so different. This time, he didn't just attack with ships, he attacked with genetic overlays. He helped design the distortions that have kept us in the dark for 25 motherfucking thousand years. But here's the aha moment, guys. DNA can be healed. Frequency can be overridden. The same way that the Eonis were trying to override the NDC grid at Stonehenge, we can override the distortions in our own fields. It starts with knowledge. It starts facing the shadow. We can't just pretend everything is light and love and ignore the fact that we've been manipulated. We have to look at the Great Deception and say, bitch, I see you this time. I want to touch in on something else too. The 1992 agreements, again, it's fascinating that this even happened right as the internet was starting to go mainstream too. Information started flowing in a way that had never been done before. The Emerald Covenant was offered to the Anunnaki as a last chance. It was like the universe saying,
Look, the cycle is ending. You can either be a part of the evolution or you can be left behind.
Some chose the evolution, some, like Thoth's group, chose the old game. When they broke the agreement in 2000, it was a signal. It meant that the battle for the grids was back on. In a big way. And if you look at the events of the last 2 decades, you can see the escalation, but don't let that scare you. The fact that the other side is working so hard means that they know their time is up. They know that once we reclaim our Mahar twin connection, once we reclaim our Merkaba vehicles and whatnot, our D12 crystal level, their game is over.
That connection is what they tried to break in us.
That Merkaba meditation that I recreated, that's what they're afraid of. You tapping in your 12th dimensional frequency. And I gave you the map and the key, guys. I invite you to take that shit up. So, they split the twins to split our power, but in the higher dimensions, those twins are still one. We're still connected to our higher selves. It's just an illusion that you're not. You have always been connected to Source. So, as we wrap up my past life journey from 25,500 BC, I just want to leave you with a question. Not a question of fear, but a question of power. If this great deception was built on the idea that you were small, isolated, and powerless, what do you think would happen when you decide that you are none of those things? What happens when you realize that the keys to the universe aren't held by some ancient gods? No, not a secret tablet, but they're actually vibrating inside of your own cells. That's the real story. That's the ending we're writing right now. So, thank you for listening, or, not slowly backing away slowly as I go over the deep history of the world based on my past life regression. It's not always easy, but it's how we find our way back home. But keep questioning, keep feeling, and most importantly, keep trusting your own inner lights. Also, I just realized I should probably clarify one more thing about the signet shields, the hubcap size ones. People often ask if they're still on the planet, and the truth is, they are. Also, they're not physical. They're not just physical objects anymore. They've been translated into frequency signatures. They're part of the planetary morphogenic field. So, you don't need to go be Indiana Jones, and you don't need to go find physical discs out in the cave, out in the Samaria or whatever. You could find them by matching your frequency to them. And that's what Thoth didn't want us to know. He wanted us to think we needed those tablets, or that we needed priests in order to access that power, but that power is a resonance. If you resonate with the law of one, you are the key. All right, I'm really done now. Honestly, this stuff is so deep I could talk about this shit for days, but no one ever lets me, so here we are. Just remember, the truth is usually simpler than the deception. The deception is a complex layer full of conditions, but the truth is just the truth, so take care of yourself. Be careful of the thoughts you let into your brain. We're all in this together, and the Iani, well, we're still here. Anyway, their legacies are awakening, so let's make it a good one. Actually, let me add one more thing. How about the breeder programs? Yeah, that thing. I know it's a heavy topic, but it's important to understand why the Anunnaki did what they did. The Anunnaki weren't just being cruel, they were being desperate. They had lost their own connection to the higher dimensions. They were just trying to steal the light codes from the Iani because they couldn't generate that frequency themselves. It's like a spiritual vampire situation. When you understand that, you stop seeing them as powerful God and you start seeing them as deeply broken beings. That shift in perspective is everything. You don't fear a vampire. You protect your energy and then you stay in the light. That's your job. So, be so full of your own light that the old breeder of our energy program harvest simply isn't possible anymore. How funny would that be? It's about sovereignty, pure simple. Toth traded this for a seat at the table that was already crumbling, so we don't have to make the same mistake. We can build our own table, or better yet, we can realize we don't even need a motherfucking table at all because we can fly. We just haven't figured it out yet. Well, all right, I'm setting off now. Real this time, but keep your frequency high, your oscillation low, your heart open. The Great Deception is over soon, as you can see. Decide to see through it. I'll see you next time in the next episode. Promise. About the Stonehenge area, if you ever visit these sacred sites, just remember they're neutral. They're just technology, but it's the intention, it's the frequency that you bring to them that matters. Don't be afraid of the gifts that you've been given or the planetary grids. Be the one who brings the correction. Be the one who brings the frequency of the halls of Moria back to Earth. That's how we heal the land. That's how we finish what the Yanni started in Kauai, okay? All right, I'm definitely going now. Peace out, Girl Scout.